Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, what has happened to the Oklahoma State Cowboys? We get into that. Joey McGuire gets into other subjects next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you again. Raring and roaring for football, basketball, anything the week is throwing at us. And today we'll take a listen to, I'd also say, a raring and roaring, maybe even chomping at the bit, Joey McGuire as his team prepares for a trip to Stillwater, Oklahoma. Want to get to what's on his radar as far as some guys that could be seeing some snaps to a degree we haven't seen so far this year in the final couple of weeks. And want to get right into what he had to say about some things that really have taken place on both sides of the football, offense and defense. It's going back to a previous bye week, a self-scout, some of what was learned then and some of what we have seen since then, some of what they're hoping to do also with the final 2 weeks of the regular season, offensively and defensively. Here is Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire.
You know, especially on the defensive side of the ball, whenever you look at Colorado, Iowa State, and TCU, you know, we've moved a lot more. We've gotten a lot more pressure in those games. One guy that has done that, you know, is Jacob Rodriguez in those stretches. And so a lot of that coming out of, you know, we didn't do it as much. Our Baylor game plan, which, you know, obviously we didn't do a good job in a lot of areas, was more of the Arizona type stuff. And then whenever you go these last three games, there's been a lot of more movement on defense. That was a lot more of the self-scout of coming out of that, you know, and makes a big difference. And then, you know, offensively, it's really not self-scout. It's like with us, really the last 2 weeks where we've got to become better is like our first quarter, I think we scored 106 points. Our second quarter, we scored 102 points. And then there's a dramatic difference in our second half as far as the points. I think it's like 66 and like 70-something. So our right now is being more consistent on offense, whether that's, you know, attacking more vertical, taking more shots downfield, which we tried to do a little bit against Colorado, and then going back also, if you look at offensively being more consistent after our first two drives. You know, the first two drives against Iowa State should have been 14-3, you know, but it was 10-3. Same way with Colorado, it's 13-0, and you know, so us after that third and fourth series being more aggressive and getting more points out of that.
Touches on a lot of different things, Chris, a lot of different phases of what they're trying to get done. I know a lot are highly intrigued, like I am, to see how they come out of this one after it wasn't so enjoyable out of the first one earlier in the year.
Yeah, that old Baylor game going to stick in the old craw for quite the time. But I hope everybody out there is having a lovely Tuesday. I think as you get going after your second bye week, I think there's probably a few things you can learn from the first one. And this time you're coming off of a loss instead of coming off of a win. I think you're going on the road as opposed to being at home. So there's some differences there, but I think this is where you kind of find out you're not in the conference championship hunt, although I think mathematically, like somehow you're still involved, but realistically.
That's right.
Yeah, that. I don't know the amount of like things that I would be trying to root for, and for it to all fall into place. I don't know exactly what has to happen, but it doesn't. Probably won't matter.
But you're telling me
this is where you. Yeah,
just when I thought I was out, they come dragging me back in.
yes. Lauren Holly and Jim Carrey, man, back in the day, man. Absolutely. they're this is where these are the kinds of times in your program when you kind of, this is when you find out how strong your culture is, how mature your team is, all those kinds of things like come into play here, because and this is just, again, I can't get over the PTSD that we've had in the past with not just this program or this opponent or just being a Red Raider in general. It's a tricky game, man. I mean, it just is. It's like I look at all these names, and keep in mind, you didn't play these guys last year, which was dumb, but you didn't play these guys last year. But so many of these same cast of characters here were playing for the conference championship in Arlington in early December. And it's one of life's great mysteries that they just it just hasn't worked this year for whatever reason. And you just hope that they don't figure it out at your expense on senior day in Stillwater, with a lot of those same guys going through home game ceremonies for the very last time. Again, played for the conference championship last year, and they haven't won a conference game since.
Do you have any read personally on what you think went wrong?
I think, well, like a lot of things, or like a lot of situations like this, I think they lost because, they beat Arkansas the third game of the season. It wasn't pretty, but it was a big win, and they had to kind of come from behind to do it. And I thought, it's just Mike Gundy doing his thing. Don't here we go again, right? But I think in that game they lost Colin Oliver. That's what I think derailed them on. He is their Jacob Rodriguez. He is their heart and soul. He's a guy that's going to play in the NFL. But during that game, he got hurt, and I think I'm right there. And then he hasn't played since, and he's out for the rest of the season, obviously. That's part of it. Defensively, they've just been, where your rankings have been really bad, talking about Texas Tech, I mean, their rankings are worse. They are one of the worst pass defenses in the country, like 5 spots worse than you are. But I think the other thing is their quarterback play has been bad, because I think what teams decided to do was, we see this offensive line that you've got back, we see this running back that you've got, we're going to just say no. We're going to load it up, and then you're going to have to throw it, and do all this stuff. And I just don't think that consistently they were able to do that. But in that, we can get into more of that as the week goes along with Alan Bowman, and they've kind of switched it up. And then Josh Rangel plays a bit. They almost beat BYU. A couple weeks go by, he gets hurt, and now they go back to Bowman. There's all these rumors about Bowman either being replaced or quitting or whatever. He's been there the whole time. And so now what they've got left is a true freshman in Malachi Smith. But it still doesn't, So I just remind everybody, though, that after their first bye week, they went to Provo, and they had BYU dead to rights.
Yeah.
They had them dead to rights, and it was one of those miracle finishes up in BYU at the very end of the game that, and I think Oklahoma State was maybe 3-3 at the time. It was kind of their last stand, if you will. And then BYU was just kind of starting to figure out that they were this invincible team. But that thing was like a 38-33 or something final score. So I don't know. I don't know what we'll get, but I'm as curious about Texas Tech as I am Oklahoma State.
A wily veteran head coach in November is always something to pay attention to, and you're getting that, to say the least, with Mike Gundy across the field from you in his home stadium as well. So I'm really intrigued by it, and yeah, there's no reason to be sleeping on anybody at this point in the season, given some of the highs and lows we've seen from Tech. I mean, we've seen some wild swings where you're feeling like, man, you can compete for something interesting. Other times you're feeling like, how many more wins are out there on the schedule, and you're sort of getting a little more skeptical. So Coach McGuire mentioned that roller coaster of a season and talked about the frustration that came with to kick off his week this week. But we're looking for a high on the other side of this open week. And I'm curious, Chris, going back to his comment, him talking about it sounded like some progress made defensively, sort of since that other point where you had an open week and you had found a way to, achieve some pressure on the quarterback to at least a respectable amount or something close to it. Just, it wasn't lifeless anymore. Not that you were just stacking up sacks or anything, but what was your thought on his offensive comment about finding a way to be more consistent as an offense? First, today's episode brought to you by Roy, and it's time to highlight the LOTT Roy Player of the Week. Roy is a new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. So download Roy for iOS or Android and enter our referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. This week, we're going back to the defensive side of the ball and saluting Jacob Rodriguez, 17 tackles and a sack against Colorado. He's one of the Big 12's leading forced fumble men this year, and he remains the Big 12's tackling leader with an even 100 so far this season. So for that, we're kicking Jacob $100 on Roy. If you've been as impressed with Jacob as we are, you can show him some love too. Just hop on Roy and throw in whatever you feel like. Any amount adds up fast, and now you have the chance to show your appreciation for Jacob and his standout performance this season. Just download Roy for iOS or Android and enter our referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically also be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. What are you waiting for? Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. Of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. What was your thought on his offensive comment about finding a way to be more consistent as an offense, throughout the game? That doesn't seem like just some switch you flip. So, man, how do you even go about, trying to attack that problem?
Well, and it can be in the sense that, I think Joey was asked a question yesterday about how much input does he have on what's going on offense,
Yeah.
i.e., do you have the ability, coach, to speed it up, slow it down, like what, hey, we want to run it here, all that stuff. And he's like, I've got a heavy influence. And in fact, he was like, I screwed us up. I think he has said before in these press conferences. Yesterday, he went through the whole I screwed us up versus TCU. I told Zach to slow it down, and we did, and then we got out of rhythm, and it wasn't good. I think he has also said in one of these press conference settings that he stuck with the run game too long, or maybe not. No, I think opposite. Sorry, that he didn't stick with the run game long enough up in Pullman. That they kind of bailed out on it. Taj wasn't there, and all that stuff, and that they didn't. They should have stuck with it, but they just kind of started just throwing it all over, and that's when the interceptions came, and those pass rushers pinned their ears back, and all that stuff. Anyway, long story short, he's just kind of basically saying, I think that you can, doesn't mean you'll be successful with it, but you can kind of shift gears into we're gonna be more up tempo, we're gonna take more shots. Now you can mix in a little more. 3 and out and some empty possessions, but sometimes you have to take the good with the bad if you're willing to be more aggressive and willing to. Because what wouldn't surprise me? Here's 1 + 1, and sometimes that doesn't equal 2. But remember Baron Morton's first ever start? You remember
In
this?
Stillwater.
It was
Is that
in Stillwater.
Right? Yeah.
You know how many times he threw it that game?
How many?
62.
Is that all?
He he threw for nearly 400 in that game. He was, you know, and I remember Mike Gundy after the game going, "This kid's going to be a big time problem for the rest of the league." After that, you and I
do remember that praise. Yeah.
He, you know, and he was never really the same after that game that year because it was right at the end of the first half, and he jumped up to throw it or something, and he lands on a defender, and he just like turned his ankle. It was kind of like a high ankle sprain, and you thought, you've got to be kidding me. Keep in mind, he's only playing because Tyler Shuck is hurt. Okay, so this is why. And you're just like, what? Why? Who did we piss off? You know, like, why is this happening to all these quarterbacks with these injuries? But they aired it out. They put a lot of pressure on Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State had a very difficult time. And then you kind of Barron became, after in the second half, he was immobile and he wasn't the same. I just wonder. Because I'm looking at it, Sir Roderick Thompson, he had about 90 yards rushing in that game, but you mainly just you were aggressive and you threw it. You lost 41-31. But I just wonder if you will really, because this is an NCAA worst passing defense. It just is. That's what the numbers would say.
Yeah, every once in a while when I descend into a spiral of sadness and am sick enough to look up Texas Tech defensive statistics, which does happen. I see that OSU logo in the neighborhood. They're on the same screen, on the same page as we are on a lot of those. So I guess we're saying take the over.
And there was a time when you kind of would have liked to have been in the same neighborhood defensive statistically,
that's right.
You know, whatever. But
they've come to our neighborhood instead of us.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's right. But they, because they've always just been very opportunistic when it comes to defense. They have mastered the takeaway, and you know they're not just swimming in 5-star, 4-star guys. They're a developmental program like you are, but they've just always out schemed or out hustled, or and Gundy is very conservative. He's not the analytics 4th down guy. I mean, I think he's been very slow to come around to that aspect. They just that's what is always given them a bit of an advantage on defense is their ability to take the ball away. But that's kind of gone away a little bit this year, and then they've done a poor job of turning it over on offense. But I don't know if you take the over or not, really, because their offense is not. Yeah, so I don't know what to think because their offense has not been great, but I think you don't know what you're going to get with the Texas Tech defense as well.
That's true. I feel like you had a thought about the offense being something, and then it crossed your mind. Oh yeah, but they have not played. Texas.
Yeah, well, you just don't know what you're going to get. Yeah, you don't know what you're going to get. But I do.
Back to the roller coaster.
Yep, the Judge Roy scream there in Arlington, Texas. Or the shockwave, the loop-de-loop, whatever.
Yeah, 2 Judge Roy riders, I'm assuming, hosting this show.
Darn right, man. Old school wooden roller coaster.
That's right.
But I hear Joey saying we've got to get back to being more aggressive, or we need to do more down the field.
Yep.
And and that's what like Colorado just was saying, no, like we're not giving you that. The thing about Oklahoma State has been interesting is they ran it's been written about in all the Oklahoma papers, but they ran a 3-3-5 last year, and they play in the Big 12 title game. For whatever reason, they switched to a 4-2-5, which is a subtle difference, but there's some schematic differences there, but it just hasn't worked, well. They've had moments where they play well. I think the Colin Oliver injury has really hurt them, but yeah, it's just not the same outfit that you are used to seeing, certainly. Mm-hmm. But it's a scary spot for old Texas Tech, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like they've sustained success. Had some really good individual players obviously come through here or there, but really sustained it because they were typically good in important areas, like offensive line, running the football. They'd be able to do that for the most part. And like you said, the opportunistic nature of their defense, has been the envy of a lot of teams, because you will look at some defensive team statistical rankings, even in some of their better years, it ain't all that pretty, but then you're stacking up 30 plus, takeaways or whatever it might be, and covering for a multitude of sins because you're able to fill up that takeaway column. So hoping to do that as a team when you're talking red and black. And for the most part, they've done that, but still a long way to go to be, I know, where they want to be. And, you mentioned looking like an outfit you're maybe not accustomed to seeing. We could be saying the same thing about Texas Tech in some ways. First, today's episode brought to you by Mint Mobile. And I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but it's got to be easy. I'm talking no hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I had to find out if it was really real. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process is spending time on hold waiting to break up with your old phone provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see that right now all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with you, as well as all of your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for only $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for only $15 a month, just go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege and cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. You mentioned looking like an outfit you're maybe not accustomed to seeing. We could be saying the same thing about Texas Tech in some ways. You and I got into this a little bit yesterday as far as some new faces or red shirt type faces that we may be seeing a little bit more of over the final 2 weeks into bowl season. And Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire touched on those types of guys as well. And I mentioned a few names I wanted to circle back to with you here, Chris. He's
a redshirt freshman. I expect to see Kelby Vaslin in the game on Saturday. We'll have some stuff for him. He's had some really, really good scrimmages, so maybe some different packages. I could see him. We're hoping that Micah is able to go. We'll see as the week goes, because I'd like to see him as a punt returner. That would be the plan if he can go. If not, it's going to be against West Virginia, because we feel like we should be able to get him back by then. And then some of the, Nick Fattig being fully healthy, he's had good scrimmages. Jacob Ponton, we've gotten past to where we're not going to burn his red shirt. He came into the game at the end of the game against Colorado. Thought he did a good job for being, sitting for 3 and almost 4 quarters and jumping in there. And so I think you'll see some more of the young guys like that in some roles, that we know that we're not going to be able to burn the red shirt. Peyton Morgan will probably take more of like Oliver Miles has been playing some special teams, so he's played 4 games. We're not going to burn his red shirt, so we're going to pull him back until the bowl game, and so Peyton Morgan will go in that spot. So stuff like that.
Chris touched on a couple of those names on yesterday's episode, but was curious to hear your thoughts on some of the others. Kelby Vaslin, one that I'm intrigued by, and I know you've mentioned on this show before. And also hearing Micah Hudson discussed in terms of being a punt returner stands out as well. So what'd you make of his thoughts there?
Yeah, so, there's not, and he was also asked about Will Hammond and all that, but this is still Barron's show for right now. He did say we're going to get through the regular season, then we'll reassess when the bowl game rolls around. So put an asterisk, by that on a lot of this stuff, because he just kind of was like, we're worried about this next phase, and then we'll worry about the other phase when we get through this first one. To me, it'll be either Ponton or Buchanan at left tackle. I think that if Micah can play, he was on the sideline in the Colorado game with a boot on his, I forgot which foot it was on, lower leg injuries, what the injury report keeps stating that it is. But you hear the name of Kelby, and I think that one or the other, maybe both, would factor in a little bit, but maybe one or the other, depending on if Micah can't play. I don't know which positions that Kelby specifically knows or has learned or anything like that. So I reserve the right to change my mind a bit here. But I think that with more receivers being mentioned, it kind of tells you they intend to throw it a little bit on Saturday. I think, and Nick Fattig is a redshirt freshman, so that doesn't necessarily qualify. Peyton Morgan, he mentioned, is going to play some special teams, but like the Micah Hudson thing at punt returner, this is just like the basketball game, last night against Arkansas Pine Bluff, in that you are able to experiment on occasion with some things that you want to see. Like whether it's later on in the year or let's get a peek and kind of throw guys in a real, that's just when you find out if a guy, because I think the basketball game last night, I think something that we touched on the telecast was Grant McCaslin really wanted to see his small ball lineup, Devin Cambridge at the 5. And we saw that quite a bit, put a bunch of guards around him, let Cambridge run the 5. And we haven't been able to work on that a bunch because we hadn't had our guards healthy. Cambridge was whatever. But, last night gave you a great opportunity to utilize a ton of that. And I think that, would you want to put Micah Hudson out there as a punt returner for a first time and just kind of get a look at it a bit if you were still in the conference championship race? I don't know. I mean, I kind of liked Coy Aiken and Josh Kelly's ability just to catch it and not fumble it. And I don't want to see any more than that. Just
right.
Just handle it and then, wave the arm and then be done with it.
Has Hudson been practicing there?
I think this was, and people forget this about Micah, but, he did not, there was no spring here.
Yeah.
He kind of wasn't even really full go at the beginning of August, but I think eventually in August, I think that there was a variety of folks that had a lot of punt and kick return.
Gotcha.
Not really tryouts, but reps. And it's just a hard skill. It's not as easy as one would think. And kick return and punt return are very different. So I think that's worth pointing out as well. And but I think they want to see if there's something there for sure.
I just want to see him out there.
Well, that too.
Just want to see him back out there, and he can try whatever he wants after that.
You hear the name of Kelby Valson, and he's the guy. If you remember back, he was the guy in Tucson that recovered the onside kick to essentially end the game. There's a lot of young wideouts that we have not heard from at all. Tyson Turner and T.J. West, DJ Crest. I mean, it just on and on. There's a whole bunch of them. So it'd be kind of nice to see, because you're going to lose Josh Kelly after the season.
That's right.
To graduation and all those things. So yeah, away we go.
Yeah, let's begin refilling the pipeline ASAP from within, without, wherever it has to be. Chris, before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you about this piece of news that's been getting some attention to kick off the week, and it really resonates this week because Texas Tech is going to be playing a football game on ESPN Plus, the dream of many, but the reality of few, a very precious few, to experience an ESPN Plus broadcast. And I'm sure you've been paying attention to what's been reported regarding inventory shifting for the Big 12 Conference to TNT. I believe TBS also, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think it's TNT and TBS. Then there's a simulcast mixed in somewhere with the Max streaming platform. But I got to tell you, seeing the descriptor of this moving from ESPN Plus platforms to what I mentioned there in those networks, on the surface sounds like a really big win for the Big 12 Conference. And most importantly, for me as a consumer of content, let's get that straight, me first. But maybe I'm misinterpreting or misunderstanding. What'd you make of the move, and what do you think it means for the Big 12?
So this has to do with a lawsuit between the NBA and their media rights deal and all that. And then the Big 12 just got kind of looped into it. Everybody's been wondering what's going to happen with inside the NBA. And like the NBA was like, had given their media rights to, they didn't give it to them. Amazon acquired them, which I think starts next year. And TNT was like, we have the right to match this. Like, you can't just take these away. We have the right to match. Kind of like what Under Armour and Adidas were going through with Texas Tech. Like, Under Armour would have had the right to match it had they wanted to. And it was kind of like a lawsuit waiting to happen, or maybe there was a suit filed and all that stuff. They decided to come together, and this is kind of what they agreed to. They're basically just kind of almost kind of like it's a content swap. So ESPN is now going to have, like, inside the NBA, they're going to have, I forgot the number, it's somewhere like 30 to 40 NBA games and things like that, you know, as part of this settlement. And so what happened is Warner Brothers is like, okay, well, we don't, if y'all are going to get all that, we don't have anything. So ESPN was like, well, we got a bunch of extra Big 12 content. Would you be interested? And I mean, so I think somehow Brett Yormark got involved. And so you're kind of, I don't know how the selections are going to go on all this stuff. I don't know if they're going to get premium games or if they're just going to get the leftovers, if it's going to be somewhere in between. I really don't know, but this is going to start next year. And, because this is going to be Texas Tech's second football game to be on ESPN Plus. I believe the Abilene Christian game was on said streaming platform as well. John Harris and I do a lot of the basketball games that are on ESPN Plus. There's a lot of conference basketball inventory that ends up on ESPN Plus as well, depending on, they'll put very strategic on what games they put on there because they want people to get to subscribe. So they try to tap it. It's like it's like utilizing the Dallas Cowboys on the Thursday night Amazon deal. And, I mean, all the Chiefs are getting put on Netflix and all that stuff. So anyways, long story short, yes, you're going to have content, football and men's basketball on these linear channels, which means you don't have to stream them. You can just watch them on regular TV going forward, which I think is the fan wins. And I think Brett Yormark and the Big 12 feel like they won because that now you are kind of buddying up with another media partner and one that is interested in live sports. And so you can now create some leverage for yourself by getting into business with some other folks. And so maybe your stuff is worth a bit more next time that you go to market. And that's when you start to talk about, can we separate our football stuff and our basketball stuff? Now what is it worth, when we put that together? So these are all the things to be thinking about. But my favorite TBS Texas Tech memory, Bill Callahan was coaching the Nebraska Cornhuskers at the time. I want to say this would have been in 2004 because I think TBS or TNT, one of the two, they used to be a part of the regular Big 12 rotation back in the day. TBS. Yeah, TBS. Mm-hmm. And you beat Nebraska. Ron Thulin, Charles Davis. There was a bunch of – but you beat Nebraska so bad in Lubbock, Texas, that I remember standing on the opposing – on the visitor sideline, and the TV cameras were showing these Cornhuskers, and then they got that big white helmet with the N on it, like just hiding their faces, like so the camera wouldn't catch them. And they got 70 dropped on them in Lubbock. But yeah, I vividly remember that game was on. If you're saying TBS, that's what it was on.
Yeah, I remember that one, and a couple of others being on TBS there.
Yeah,
during that era. Look, easier to find. Got to be more eyeballs on TNT, just casuals, than there are ESPN Plus. And so I think all the way around, it should be a win. I know it'll be a win again for the viewer and or consumer, which is just a byproduct because I don't really care about that. But I hope it will also be a win for the conference, and I don't really see why it wouldn't be. So, and already a network that's established in the sports category, high quality, all of those things. With all due respect to the CW, it's not a totally new venture as far as like, hey, we're Lifetime, and we want to get into sports, and we want to start with you. All right, well, why don't you go find another guinea pig, maybe just for the first go around. TNT's been in this space for a long, long time. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking optimistically,
and I think they're airing some Mountain West games. I think they're doing some other pro sports stuff. I think they want to stay in the sports business, the live sports business. And I think if you're the Big 12, the more folks that want to do that, the better off you potentially are, because that creates leverage. And again, that also makes more sense for you to kind of split your rights up. Yeah. You know, if there's more mouths to feed, or let me rephrase that, if there's more mouths that want to be fed, and you go, hey man, we've got all this stuff. You know, now I don't know what it does to like women. I don't know what all this would eventually do with women's hoops and baseball and everything else. I also just don't know next year, like what part of the pecking order does the TNT TBS, you know, do they get one game a week? Do they get the one game that wasn't selected? I mean, I have no way of knowing in the football or basketball component, but yeah, you're going to.
I definitely think the way I've seen it described, or ESPN and Fox at least described in this reporting, would still suggest, as most probably would expect, like these are first pickers. And, you know, TNT may still wind up with a great game, but I don't think they'll be outflanking Fox or ESPN, but I don't know. We'll see. But either way, interesting news to begin the week.
I like how you use the term outflank. I appreciate that. It's like, when you're back in the old Wild West, man, you know, that's when you had the posse. It's like you got to outflank them. You know, the
TNT posse is mounted up.
Bingo. Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Appreciate the insight on that and all other subjects, Chris. Enjoyed it as always, man. Thanks for the time, and we'll see you for the next one.
Absolutely. Keep hope alive, everybody. Enjoy your lovely Tuesday. We'll talk to you next time.
Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to those everydayers for always being out there. Of course, one of the best ways to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. So thanks also to those that do that daily. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time. As always, we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.